Hello, everyone. This is Keith Stone. I'm here with Greg Nagy and Sarah and Alen. It's another installment of HeroesX version 10 office hours. We're discussing the questions for hours 14 and 15 today. The hour 14 question is, if you compare the lament of Achilles over Patroklos with the lament of Briseis, which of the two laments would you consider to be more artistic as a song? And the hour 15 question is, from Philostratus and other sources, we get the distinct impression that the ancient Greeks had sentimental feelings about the heroes they worshipped. Do you see any traces of such sentimentality in the Iliad and Odyssey? I can easily imagine why you could answer either yes or no. We'll get to that. Let's go back to the first one about the laments of Achilles and Briseis over Patroklos. What have people been saying?
Well, we have one for the lament of Briseis, and we have one for the lament of Achilles. So,
What were the reasons?
Well, the lament of Briseis is going to be a model for the lament of Achilles. So maybe they are linked together. Both of the laments are connected.
Yes.
So
I think you're right that they are connected, and I would imagine that the lament of Achilles would impress the ancient world more than the lament of Briseis. But I think for us moderns, it's the other way around. It's about when Achilles laments for Patroklos.
Yes.
And the thing is that it is in the context of Briseis lamenting. And I confess to you that sometimes I don't pay enough attention to it because I like the lament of Briseis so much because it's so multifaceted. She has so many things to be sad about. The narrative frame makes the whole topic of who should be lamented something that's questionable. Mm-hmm. Because after all, why should these slave women lament primarily for Patroklos? They should be lamenting for their own near and dear ones. But it's a tricky question. It was a very trick question. There's no doubt about it.
yes.
And the reason I was thinking about it when I formulated the question is that it's so easy to pass over for us. But I just know, given the kind of insights that, for example, Laments gives us in her remarkable book, The Tears of Achilles, that the ancient world really admired the way Achilles can lament. And he too is emphasizing how Patroklos is all cut up, just as Briseis is, and how this is more painful to him than even if his father or his son were to be killed. So what kind of an ascending scale of affection does he have? It shows. Clear right there. It shows. And I think it helps us also understand how strange it is when Alkinoos, at the end of 8, is asking Odysseus, well, why are you crying? Who are you crying for? And that's one moment where even Odysseus, you could say, is crying even for Achilles. But here, the substitute is Patroklos. And Achilles shows how it's done.
Yeah.
So I can see that it's extremely important for the ancient audience. But to repeat, for us moderns, it's so much more interesting to see a woman who whom you wouldn't expect to love Achilles at all. Why should she?
Lamenting for his substitute.
And it's easier to lament for him because he was the kinder, gentler Achilles. And in a sense, he was courting Briseis for Achilles. And it reminds me of the strangeness where we know from a Hesiotic fragment that Menelaus never courted Helen. It was Agamemnon who courted Helen for Menelaus.
And I suppose, of course, this Achilles lament that would be the favorite because he's Achilles. He's the favorite. I mean, Briseis, she's in the Iliad, but
yes,
when you're competing with Achilles.
Yes.
So one of the participants, by comparing the two, says, well, Briseis is lamenting a whole bunch of other people. She's maybe not kind of, it's mixed it up. And Achilles is much more focused on Patroklos. But I don't know, I think there is still some sort of awareness of lamenting for other people as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And that all has to do with the dynamics of lament, that it is a hierarchical thing. Even in anthropological studies of laments as they are performed today, we can see that at any given moment, whoever is in the forefront as a mourner will prioritize the things that she's sad about. But in a sense, the group which is participating, because mourning is almost never, or let's say seldom, a solo event. It's a group event, and it's really not just singing, but dancing in the sense of motor activity, of swaying, of other outward demonstrations of sorrow. So it is song and dance, and it's definitely a group activity. And then whoever happens to have the primary voice at any given moment, that interacts antiphonally with everybody else. So the sorrows are shared, and it's just that the spotlight keeps changing from which sorrow to which other sorrow. And I find that very beautiful and purging almost, is that it's an activity where even if at a given moment it's not your primary pain that is being mourned, you're nevertheless part of that, and you're processing your own pain just by singing about somebody else's, singing and dancing and physically reacting to it.
Right, it actually says that, doesn't it, after the lament of Briseis?
Yes.
So she spoke weeping, and the women kept on mourning in response. They mourned for Patroklos, that was their pretext, but they were all mourning, each and every one of them, for what they really cared for in their sorrow. And that gets me every time.
It gets me every time too. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful about the voice that maybe isn't heard, but it is heard, because that's the beauty of a group, of a group's performance, and something that's communal. I so agree.
Is that both sides of the debate so far?
Yes, but does it touch women? Briseis' lament. Is it touching more women than men, versus men? Because it's a woman lamenting about things happening to her, and it's viewed differently if you're a woman or a man. What do you think?
I grant that should be more interesting. Maybe that's why it's interesting to us. It's hard for us to wrap our mind around the idea that Achilles can lament like a woman. He has that capacity, and I love the way MOOC shows that when you look at the physiology of crying, and we always talk about lament as crying as well as singing, singing as well as crying. Well, if you look at the physiology of crying, when men cry, they cry differently in Homeric diction, in the formulaic system. They groan deeply, they do things that are not mentioned when women are crying while lamenting. But in the case of Achilles, as Mosacre shows, he can do it both ways. So in a sense, whatever you hear when you hear Achilles lamenting, it's already an adoption of a female as well as male voice, and a group voice as well as a solitary voice, even though you see him as the chief mourner at that moment. But there too, and Hélène, you said it well, that the whole thing is a continuum. As you go from the lament of Briseis to the lament of Achilles, it's quite something. And I agree with Sarah, it's very moving. All I'm saying is it's harder for us to be moved by Achilles because we don't see that feminine side so readily as I think an ancient audience would see it.
And that would be another reason his is such a stellar performance, or a preferred one, because he's lamenting like someone he's not. You could say he's reaching the highest, I don't know, peak of his art or something as a singer.
And that's why I so treasure the book of Richard Martin, who shows so clearly that the verbal technique of Achilles resembles most of all the verbal technique of the master narrator, let's call him Homer. So when you think of the fact that it is the master narrator that is channeling Briseis, well, he's also channeling Achilles, but in that sense, the virtuosity of Homeric poetry is such that Homeric poetry can be a virtuoso performance simply by being able to reenact what a woman sings, but then Achilles himself reenacts what a woman sings, so that should be even more impressive. Again, not for us because we're too character focused. Oh, this is Achilles' turn to say something. Well, he's not just saying something. It's part of this continuum of singing and dancing lament.
Well, let's turn to the second question, because I know our time is limited. This is the one about Philostratus and sentimental feelings. And do we see any such sentimentality in the Iliad and Odyssey?
Even before we think of what the participants are thinking, could I just say that this is a really tough question, because I think Homeric poetry, I'm sorry to say it in such a personalized way, is trying not to be sentimental, but it can't help being sentimental. And I think what we've just discussed is a very good example, is when we hear Achilles, it's easy to forget that this is part of a continuum, and that if we're deeply moved by the lament of Briseis, then we should be deeply moved by the lament of Achilles. And it's not an accident. I love to keep coming back to this, that Pausanias reports that the most important cultural event of ancient Greece in historical times, which is the Olympics, was inaugurated by the lament of women. And who are they singing for as they look at the sunset in the far west the night before the Olympics begin? They're lamenting for Achilles. And it's because Achilles shows the way how to lament. He is the perfect lamenter, just as Homer, who channels Achilles as the perfect verbal artist, is the perfect verbal artist. So it's an exercise in perfection, in just pushing things to the limit of the highest form of art in this beautiful genre. And, you know, I was saying in another context, Keith heard me, that when you think of, I don't know, the virtuosity of Homeric poetry in general, and how it can express the pain of women, pain of men, pain of everybody. At the end, after all, in Iliad 24, it's the whole community that expresses pain for Hector. The virtuosity of expressing pain shows that this is not some ancient equivalent of an action film where all we're interested in is war and the kind of things that a warrior might be interested in because a warrior fights wars. No, it's to be subjective about it. I really do believe it's sort of 60% the creativity of women and 40% the creativity of men, because there's so much of the thematics of lament that's built into the entire structure. And can we go back to Helen's drug in Odyssey 4? If you drug the drinks of people when they're listening to stories of human suffering so that they can't tell the difference between somebody dying in epic and your own dear ones dying in epic, then that's not the epic that is Homeric poetry. It's something much less elevated, and it has taken the art of lament and the emotions of lament out of the whole picture.
That's such a good passage.
Yeah, there is another passage that is wonderful. It's at the end of the Iliad.
Yes.
When Priam is talking with Achilles.
Yes.
And the way Priam talks, it brings a longing to cry in a lament for his own father to Achilles. So Achilles is also longing to cry in a lament for his father. And
so beautiful, Hélène. You're so right. And there's a twist to it too, because in a sense, if he's crying for his father, he's also crying for ancestors. And Patroklos is the embodiment of the glory of the ancestors. So he's crying for Patroklos as well as his father. And that means he's crying for the epic. And the epic is all about this. So it all connects. It all connects. And I'm so glad you brought that up, dear Hélène.
What else should we add?
Well, it's never-ending sorrow, just as Achilles is a man of constant sorrow. But it's a sweet sorrow in the sense that it's so beautiful.
So another thing our participants also are thinking about, though, is in terms of a longing for a hero who has to have died, because they become a cult hero, they have to have died. And within epic, there's less emphasis on that, that they're being cult heroes. But I think there are, in passages you've just been describing, I think there are some of those ideas are hinted at.
Very much so. And I guess the closest thing to the expression of sentimentality by epic is that word potheo, pothein, that's the verb, and pothos, that's the noun, which in other contexts is a longing that's not just aesthetic, but almost sensual. Oh, I'll just say it, it's sensual as well as aesthetic. And that's sentimental, so that brings you close to what I jokingly refer to sometimes as the My Sweet Lord syndrome, when George Harrison sings that as an act of devotion to Krishna in that case.
Even Telemachus, I suppose. Maybe any example of emotion on the part of these heroes who are in the narrative is a trace of sentimentality insofar as they show us the way to behave and to relate to heroes.
It doesn't get as saccharine as in Philostratus, but who knows what real life was like. Maybe it was more saccharine even in earlier times.
Any other comments that we should bring to the fore before we wrap it up?
Well, we shouldn't end on the note of something that's saccharine. That was bad of me. Let's elevate this as a way of ending. So, dear Sarah, dear Hélène, any closing thoughts?
I have to say, I really love the Philostratus. I don't find it saccharine at all. I just love that sense of the beautiful vegetation, for example, as a metaphor, and we see that in so many other places as well.
Yeah.
We see it in the Odyssey, in the description, say, of Laertes or orchard, or if the beautiful gardens at the palace of Alkinoos. So I think there are hints of it in there.
Thank you. I think that's a much better way to end.
Well, before we say anything else, untoward.
Yeah, I think Sarah has rescued us.
And you can rescue us next time too.
Yes.
We are talking about hours 16 and 17. All right. Thanks,
Wonderful
everyone.
talking with everybody. This was such a pleasure.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.